Okay. Breaking the spell, because that's what it is. Spell has been cast on the human mind to put us in a state of perception that is not the one that we would naturally have without the spell. It's a genetic spell and it's a energetic spell. And our natural state is one of harmony with the rest of this reality and harmony with the multidimensional self. But along came this schism, this energetic change, this genetic intervention, which took us from a state of harmony, this golden age, to increasing control of our sense of perception, which broke up this society into warring factions, not just warring factions within the society, but warring factions within ourselves, because most of us are at war with ourselves. We're at war between what we feel and what we think, what we'd like to do and what we think we ought to do, what is our perceived duty and what our free spirit, where that would like to take us. It's a schism on every level. And the more that we are divided within ourselves and between ourselves, the more easy we are to manipulate and control. And so much of it, the prime level of it, is through the manipulation of the reptilian brain and its primitive emotional responses and its survival mechanism, which is based on fear and surviving in so many different ways, not just physically. I mean, the reptilian brain does fear because it's fear that activates its survival mechanism on so many levels. And its survival responses like fight or flight. When we say rightly that fear is the weapon that is most used to keep humans in line, yes, that's true, but what part of us is activated through fear so that we respond in the desired fashion? The reptilian brain. It's through the reptilian brain that we get insecurity feelings, emotional insecurity. Again, it's a form of not surviving. It's amazing how this survival sense manifests in so many ways. You know, when we have, let's start with that one, when we have religious beliefs and they are challenged, that too activates the reptilian brain survival mechanism, because survival of the belief system is at stake, is under challenge. And so you get primitive emotional responses when religious, rigid beliefs are challenged by information or other views. Same with political views, even political views. When you are having them challenged, the reptilian brain kicks in because the belief system is under threat of not surviving. Same with race and self-identity. When we have this self-identity, this is who we are, when that comes under challenge, again, the self-identity is in danger of not surviving and the reptilian brain impulses are kicked in. It's the key way that we are controlled and the way that we defend rigid belief systems and therefore rigid ways that the brain fires off and reads reality, and mostly puts us in a prison, a vibrational prison. And often because we feel more secure in the sense that our belief system is right, more secure if our sense of self is what we believe we are, we go into these little comfort zones. And these comfort zones are prisons, but they don't activate the reptilian brain emotional responses, so we feel comfortable. I feel comfortable saying that I'm a Christian. I feel comfortable saying that I'm this or I'm that. I feel comfortable in my little comfort zone. And when we're breaking out of comfort zones, i.e. we're breaking out of a sense of limitation to all possibility, this is kicking in all the time. Because something else that's now in danger of not surviving is the very mind-body system itself. So this is always telling you the reptilian brain, why you shouldn't break out and follow your heart. Oh no, you've got a mortgage, you've got a family, oh, what will your mother think? Oh, survival, 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 fear, fear, fear. And another way that we, like I said earlier, defend these belief systems that keep us in the box is by lying to ourselves and not being honest with the fact that actually the belief system doesn't stand up to this information. And instead of saying, I'm going to make it so, if we say, okay, I'm going to move my belief in the light of this, then we can start to move and break out of the boxes. Because cognitive dissonance is a form of schizophrenia, where two parts of self are thinking different things or are seeking to hold two belief systems at the same time, like doublethink, Orwell's doublethink. And again, you've got two areas of self at war with each other. One that is trying to defend the belief system, and other levels of self that know that there's a problem with that, and again, it's another war. We're not whole people. So the question is, in terms of where we go, is are we going to be consciousness or mind? Are we going to be all that is or little me? Because little me, the mind loves little me. It can get on with little me. But it can't get on with all that is because it doesn't perceive that that's who we are. It believes that it is who we are, the mind. And if it kids us to believe the same, then it's got us. So we can go on following the mind, little me, and we'll go on living the lives that we've lived, and we'll go on creating the world that we've created, this mind-made world. And on one level, because the reptilian brain's going to be telling us this, survival, survival, it's much easier if you just go with the flow and go with the mind and don't make waves and just carry on as you are and, you know, don't cause any trouble, keep your head down, everything will be fine. And that's what we've done for thousands of years, and that's why we live in the world that we do. And we're facing now the opportunity and the challenge to get that under control, to put that in a place of subordination instead of it being the governor of our reactions, our governor of our perceptions, and the governor of our fear mechanisms that hold us in servitude. And to do that, we need to move our awareness to the fact that we are consciousness and live the fact that we're consciousness. And this will scream like hell, because when you start to move into the realm of consciousness and express that in this world, you start to live lives and express views and do things and talk about things that are completely at odds with mind-made society. And you get ridiculed and you get marginalized, you get called dangerous, you get called crazy and all these things, because to mind, you are crazy. It doesn't understand about unity and all that is. It only knows about division and apartness. But this is vital that we do this and get this under control, get this out of the driving seat. Because as Einstein said, you cannot solve problems with the same level of consciousness that created them. And that's what we've been trying to do right through this human cycle of experience. In politics, we remove a political party that has a certain level of consciousness and has created mayhem as a result, and we vote in, if we're lucky, another political party that operates on the same level of consciousness, as if that's going to change anything. It doesn't. It just continues. All these things that are happening in the world that we want to find solutions to, we're trying to find solutions to them at the same level of consciousness that created the problem. Impossible. Round and round, here we go again. We have to move to another level of consciousness, otherwise nothing can change, because our level of consciousness is expressed in the physical holographic world that we decode, and will always do so. Only when our level of consciousness expands and raises itself, is the holographic world that we therefore create from that level of awareness going to change from the one it is now. We have to change for the world to change. So Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's what happens when consciousness never changes. It keeps doing the same thing because that's all it knows, because that's its program of reaction. Nothing changes. And we go round and round and round. And we need to break that cycle. Badly break that cycle as a collective and individual expression of all that is. It's no good saying we are consciousness, and it's a challenge for all of us, me included, but it's no good saying we are consciousness and having it as some kind of intellectual concept. Yes, I'm consciousness. Yes, I shall write it down in triplicate. And then live in the box. If we are consciousness, then we express ourselves as consciousness. We don't live in the box because you can't be conscious and live in a box. And the idea is to create those vibrational boxes so that we don't become conscious and the level of consciousness doesn't change, so nothing out here can change. The whole foundation of this conspiracy is to hold us in low levels of consciousness and awareness, mind, and therefore keep this cycle going round and round and round, because nothing can change unless our level of consciousness changes. And it's not that these manipulators are some all-wise, all-knowing, all-powerful beings. They're not. They're pathetic. They're on very low levels of awareness, but they are on a higher level of awareness than us, because through manipulation genetically and energetically, they have simply put us in a smaller box than they're in. They are in a massive box of limitation because of their state of consciousness, if you could call it that, their state of awareness, their state of perception. So to control from their box, they have to put humans in a smaller box than they're in, and then they've got control. And this is what has happened with the suppression of knowledge, the suppression of a real history, the suppression of scientific awareness, the suppression of all this stuff that would give us a fix on who we really are, and the immensity and genius and all powerful beings that we are in terms of our potential to create and to manifest what we want. That's all had to be kept from us, because if we are at that level of awareness, then we ain't going to be controlled by a bunch of pathetic, deeply imbalanced entities. So all that has to be shut down, and we have to believe that we are Ethel Jones and Charlie Smith. We have no power, we're just Joe Public. Who am I? I can't change anything. I use this analogy a lot because I think it fits. What we have experienced through our lifetimes in this reality, this time around with all the rest of it, is not who we are. It is a deeply false, fake position that we've been put in. And I symbolize it as the ball. The natural state of the ball in a tank of water is to float on the top. That's its natural state. And left to its own devices, left to express its natural state, that ball will float on the top of the tank. If you want to put it in an unnatural state, you have to push it on the bottom of the tank. But you can't then push it on the bottom of the tank and then leave it, because the moment you take your hand away, the ball will go to its natural state. Top of the tank again. So what you have to do to hold a ball in an unnatural state is to put it down there and bloody hold it there. Indefinitely. And that hand, symbolically, on the ball, is this explosion of manipulation, suppression, mental, emotional, electrochemical imbalance, and programming of the body computer that bombards us from crazy. The reason they have to bombard us is because we are infinite consciousness, and the potential of even the body computer to connect into much vaster levels of awareness, even within this virtual reality, are massive compared with what we're actually experiencing. So they have to keep this on all the time. It's actually a confirmation of our true potential, how hard they have to work to keep us in an unnatural state, i.e. in a state of mind and closed mind and closed awareness. So, to escape from the box, I would say we need to use the knowledge of what put us in the box and reverse it. You know, we don't need solutions, really. We need to remove the cause of the problem. And the cause of the problem is that we allow ourselves to be controlled in so many ways, and we don't need to do that. And if we don't, then the problem is not solved by a solution, it's solved by removing the cause of the problem. First of all, and this I find is the first movement that really starts this process of moving out of the box. From what point do we observe ourselves? If we observe ourselves as Ethel Jones and Charlie Smith, zoomf, we're in the box. Because we're identifying with being the body computer, being a name, being a job. Who are you? I'm Charlie Jones. I drive a bus. That's who I am. No, it's not your experience. Not who you are at all. But if we identify ourselves at that level, then we bring ourselves into a sense of limitation based on that self-identity. If, however, we move our point of observation from I am Ethel Jones and I drive a bus or whatever to I am infinite consciousness, all that is, has been and ever will be, having an experience in this now of being Ethel Jones driving a bus. It's not who I am, it's what I'm experiencing. This is not me, this is the vehicle for that experience. Immediately, it's what happened to me and it's happened to others. Your point of observation moves from little me to all that is. And once that point of observation moves, you are moving from being in this world and of it to being in this world, experiencing it, but not being of it in terms of your point of observation of your own experience and that which goes on around you. Suddenly everything starts to move, everything starts to change, just from that first readjustment of self-identity. From I am the reflection in the mirror to I am consciousness and my vehicle to experience this reality reflects in the mirror. Crucial to this movement of self-identity from little me to all that is to drop these primitive emotional responses which come from the reptilian brain. So, be afraid, be very afraid, the big monster's coming. And? Where's the reptilian brain? There. Oh, God! And? I'm all that is. Has been, ever will be. I'm not frightened of anything. Why would I be frightened? What is there to be frightened of? Would consciousness be frightened of the big bad monster you're now inventing around your table? No. I am consciousness. I am not frightened of the big bad monster that you're in the process of inventing and trying to sell me as a big bad monster. Terrorism! Reptilian brain. In a picture, reptilian brain. Ah! So, terrorism. And? This mechanism has to go. These primitive emotional responses based on fear and based on reaction, not considered observation, that has to go. Because every time we react like that, we all do it. I'm not sitting cross-legged on a mountain saying I'm the Buddha and I shall tell you how it's all done. You know, I go through life trying to understand more things, but I go through life also experiencing my own journey. I've got arthritis in my knees. I can't sit cross-legged anymore. I haven't done for ages, which is good. I can't be the Buddha. And so it affects us all, but once you start to realize how this works, you start then to notice your primitive emotional responses when the reptilian brain kicks in, and then you can override it. You can go, oops, bit of rep brain there, sorry. That's all right, I notice it now. Change. Bird flu and swine flu. The reaction. Actually, these masks don't work. But it makes me feel better, you know. It keeps this a bit more quiet if I've got a mask. But again, the reaction comes from here and gets the desired response, which gets the desired justification to push the agenda forward. If we want to take control of our reality back, We need to move to a point where we identify ourselves between being infinite conscious and having experience, and we need to get this bugger under control. And we can do that by not reacting emotionally in the way that we are programmed to do, like sheep. You know, I've stood in England sometimes, and I've watched vast numbers of sheep being controlled by one sheepdog, fear, and the shepherd on a stick, symbol of authority. If those sheep did not succumb to fear and to authority and just went off and expressed their uniqueness, that shepherd and that sheepdog would have not one hell of a chance of making those sheep go where they want them to go. It would be impossible. But because the sheep conform to authority and yield to fear, one sheepdog and one shepherd can get large numbers of sheep to go exactly where they want them to. That's how humanity is controlled, and it's again through the reptilian brain. It's another thing. A sense of survival, a sense of security comes with most people, large numbers of people, from being like everyone else. Being like everyone else is like a comfort zone for people. And people feel uncomfortable when they break out of the herd. Lots of people do. Because in some way this is kicking in. Because it's again a form of not surviving, that leaving the comfort zone, which is living, believing and perceiving like the vast majority do. It all comes back to that. This is the guard on the gate. And to break out of that, we need to become the maverick. Not become the maverick because, again, a self-identity, I'm the maverick, I'm going to be different for the sake of it. No. Following our own heart, following our own desire in terms of the direction we want to go, the things we want to do and explore. And not denying and repressing that because it will take us out of the herd and, oh, what will your mother think, and oh, what about the guys down the pub and the people at work and all that stuff. Being different, because being different is what happens when we express our uniqueness. We become different. Not different for the sake of it, different because we're different when we express our uniqueness and don't succumb to the herd mentality. This was a wonderful film, The Dead Poets Society, where Robin Williams was showing the boys in his class how to do this, how to think outside of the box. And he stood on his desk and he said, I stand upon my desk to remind myself that we must constantly look at things in a different way. You see, the world looks very different from up here. You don't believe me? Come and see it for yourselves. And the boys are there like, oh, stand on desk. We shouldn't stand on desk. It doesn't feel right standing on desk. And eventually they do, and they break out of this fear of not conforming. And we're now being offered the chance, as this information and this understanding starts to come to light, to break out of all these self-induced and externally engineered prisons, breaking out of being in the herd and reconnecting to all that is. And when you do that, you start behaving in different ways and saying different things and having different views. And this has to be brought under control, where it's not activating survival because you're being different, because you're the governor of this, it's not the governor of you, and therefore you can be different without the fear of the consequences. I went through incredible, breathtaking ridicule in Britain for years and years and years, and in the national media I still do. Couldn't give a damn. This doesn't kick in anymore because I don't give a damn what people think of me. Why? Because they have a right to think what they like. You know, if they think I'm crazy, they have a right to think I'm crazy. Who am I to say that they shouldn't? It's called freedom. But I've reached a point, not because I'm a genius or something special, but purely through the experience of mass ridicule. Eventually the waters broke, where it didn't matter anymore. And the freedom that brings is indescribable. where there's no mental gymnastics. How do I put this in a way that these people will think I'm sane? What do I leave out so these people will not think I'm crazy? Instead, open my mouth, say what I feel. People think I'm crazy. Well, that's their right. And it's my right to say what I like, okay? So everyone's a winner. So, another thing that I found, I'm talking about my own experiences here and the process I've been through. Another thing I've found is really important to go through this process of deprogramming to consciousness. And what you're doing is you're not becoming conscious. We're already bloody conscious. It's just that we're not accessing that level of ourselves because the mind is getting in the way. Instead of the mind being the vehicle for consciousness to experience this reality, mind has become the governor. It's like sitting next to your computer and the computer taking over and deciding where it goes on the internet and what it thinks of it. Well, you're sitting here banging the bloody keys and nothing's happening. The mind takes over. That's the idea of the genetic manipulation, and it's the idea of all the other manipulation. What I found is clearing my mind. I went through a process from 2007. I had massive changes in my life. I'd reached a point where the pressure of what I do had reached the point where I was becoming very badly physically ill. I was becoming really overweight. And I started to realize that the reason that, because I don't eat that much, not at all, but what I started to realize is actually when you take on massive emotional baggage, the body stores that emotional, energetic poison where it's not going to affect the body, and it stores it in fat. And if you haven't got enough fat, well, it produces fat to store it in. And so emotion can actually manifest as physical weight in the body. It did with me. And great changes happened in my life because I knew that if this went on for a few more weeks or months, I wasn't going to be here. I was facing tremendous challenges to try and stop me what I'm doing and all the rest of it. And then I went through this process, and it was like amazing. I started to, first of all, have this obsession with throwing out everything that I didn't need. And I only live in a little flat, but it's amazing how much rubbish that you don't need and will never use that actually builds up. And for weeks, literally, I was going down several times a week to the recycling tip with all this stuff and just dumping it. And dumping it until eventually I had nothing left except that I used every day, and one or two things I maybe needed, but not much. This cupboard, which had all the rubbish in, empty. And then after that had finished, and I'm quite a clean person around the house. I like to keep things clean, but I'm not obsessive with it. But for about 3 weeks, I was cleaning every bloody thing. I was getting all the cleaners and all the polishers, and I was going around and I was cleaning every bloody thing. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? I've got to clean this. And then I realized that what was happening was I was externalizing something that I started to realize was going on inside myself. All that emotional baggage, all that built-up frustration and stuff was starting to dissolve. And as it did so, it externalized itself with me throwing out all the external things around me, of baggage that I didn't need, and cleaning out the house, cleaning out myself is what I was doing. And I went through this process for about 6 months, and vast amounts of this emotional baggage just fell from me. And I lost weight, everything. And I realized that we hold ourselves in servitude also by filling our minds with clutter that is completely irrelevant. You know what, all this, I love it now sometimes, when I sit there quietly and I listen to my mind. It's ever so much fun, it's hilarious, it's so stupid. I sit there and my mind goes, and your mind's going, it's thinking about a situation that's coming up. And it goes, and if he says this to me, I'll say this to him, and then I'll say that to him and stuff. And if he says this, I'm going to do this. And then you laugh and you think, well, what do you mean? He ain't said that yet. And he probably never will. And you're feeling this whole drama. The mind loves drama. That's another reason why it likes to be frightened. It loves drama. Have you heard about swine flu? Ooh, mind loves drama. That's why so many people love soaps on television and dramas, because the mind loves them. Consciousness doesn't do drama, you know, but mind, it loves it, right? So I started to see how all this mind clutter just gets in the way of becoming conscious. And when you listen to your mind working and you observe it, it's hilarious, because, like I said earlier, you start to ask the question, well, who's observing my mind? Hey, it's consciousness. And you start to realize your mind really is a program that runs by itself if it takes control. So clearing your mind is so important. And I'm saying this to myself because it's a constant process of cleaning out these things, these vestiges of clutter that are still there. And this is one of the things that came to me. And I still go through this myself and work on it and realize it. It doesn't matter. Like I say, the mind loves drama. So to the mind, everything bloody matters. Everything, because it loves drama. That woman, what she said to me in 1953, I've never forgotten it, ruined my bloody life. I've never forgotten her. Right? 1953. She's not alive anymore. And if she is, she's probably having a great time. You know, and here you are winding yourself up on what she said in 1953. That loves drama. And, this, that, and the other. Oh, that's terrible. I can do that. All the rest of it. And you go, I have this deathbed cleansing, you might call it. Look at a situation that's winding you up, and then say, again, primitive emotional responses, and then say, if I was on my deathbed now, with 10 minutes to live, would this matter? And if 99% of the time, these things that wind us up and activate this reaction process of emotion, we'd say on the deathbed, nah, it didn't matter at all. The trick is to bring that forward here, or bring that into this now, and not let it matter now. Because as you become more and more conscious, and I still fall into it, we all do, but less and less and less and less, when you open to consciousness, more and more, I find myself going, it doesn't matter. My son must be getting fed up with it. Keeps saying to me, what about this, Dad, and all that stuff. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because it doesn't. The mind just makes it matter because it loves drama. And when we look at our lives, if we just take that deathbed point of observation, if I was on my deathbed now with 10 minutes to live, would this thing that's winding me up now matter? And the answer is no. Well, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And as we withdraw from everything mattering, what we're actually doing is we're taking the power of mind away. All the time, every time we say some drama, doesn't matter. We're taking the power of the mind away to dictate our perception. Every time we are faced with a situation where the survival mechanism would normally kick in and go, ah, and we don't go, ah, we are taking the power of the reptilian brain away from our sense of perception all the time. And as we do that, we allow consciousness in. Taking responsibility is absolutely vital, because what the system's always trying to do is get us to externalize responsibility, because they know if we externalize it, then nothing will ever change. Because the real responsibility for the reality we're experiencing is here, so if we're looking there, this never changes. And again, I keep coming back to it, to the point of boredom. When we externalize blame, again, it's the reptilian brain, survival. It's surviving a situation by responsibility for it, which other parts of the brain actually do. And so we say, when we're in a situation we don't like, it's all your fault. I mean, you know, it could be suggested that I've said in the last 6 or 7 hours, it's the reptilian's fault. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's our fault. It's not fault. It's not about fault. It's not about blame. But it's our responsibility. The few can only control the many if the many give their power away. We've made it possible. We can make it impossible by taking that power back. But when we externalize blame, for things that are happening in our lives, then we are condemning ourselves to those things never changing because the source that's making them happen is not being addressed. I had a letter once from a guy, and he said for 16 years he'd been facing constantly this same decision in different forms and situations, and every time he took the same decision in response to it, and every time his life didn't change and went to another point where he had the same decision to make. After 16 years, when that situation came up again, he took the other decision. His life changed. It never repeated. Because he realized that he was creating it, and therefore he took responsibility for the fact that he was creating these things happening in his life he didn't like. And by taking responsibility and making a different decision, changing himself, that recurring unpleasant experience stopped. We are in control, and we'll only change it by taking our control back and not blaming some other bugger. Carl Jung, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. Have you noticed? We all have done it in our lives. There's no kind of perfect beings here who've done everything right according to the book, and what is right and anything, you know, this right and wrong stuff, it's just subjective rather. But how many times when something has happened in our lives or something has happened in a situation, do we work on ourselves, the chatter, to convince ourselves it wasn't our responsibility, it wasn't our fault, it wasn't us that made that happen? Why? While if we say, yes, I'll take responsibility for that, by doing that, we make sure it doesn't happen again. We make sure we don't face that situation again as the cycle repeats itself. Taking responsibility is to look at self when something happens. Why is this happening to me and not her or him? Why me? Why me? Okay, I can see why it's happening to me. I can now change that part of me that's making that happen. It doesn't happen anymore. That's how we move on, by taking responsibility. Because taking responsibility can be said to be something else, taking power back. Blaming someone else is giving power away. We are saying some people out there have control over my life. When we say I'm taking responsibility for this, and therefore I'm going to change it and change myself so it doesn't happen again, is saying I have power over my life and experience, not someone else. It's the opposite of what we think it is. We mustn't take responsibility because we don't want it to be our fault. It's not about fault, it's about power. And in the same way, we can moan about wars, and quite rightly, which are kind of obviously horrific with bombs dropping on civilian cities, but on another level, all the arguments and conflicts that we have among ourselves. I still have a few, but dramatically less than I ever did, because it doesn't matter, comes in so often now. But if we stop conflicting among ourselves and also within ourselves, heart and head, should I, shouldn't I, really want to do this, this is my duty though, all these conflicts within and between ourselves, then they wouldn't manifest collectively as wars, which are just a collective version of conflict and an extreme version of conflict, which is an expression of the conflict that's going on constantly within ourselves and between ourselves. Crikey, have you seen some husband and wives and families bloody arguing and cussing and all the rest of it that goes on, and then they go on peace marches? You know, we need to sort ourselves out, and then the collective will take care of itself. And also this idea, and this is again a cognitive dissonance, of you fight for something, you fight for peace, you fight to stop wars, you fight to stop globalization. When we fight something, when we, for instance, riot at protests and stuff like that, what we're doing is becoming what we are fighting. It's a simple truth. What we fight, we become. You know, you see protest marches against something, and a lot of the protest marches act just like the people that they're protesting against. Can't tell the difference between them. And so the more we fight, the more we become what we say we oppose. If we want to change something, if we want peace, we need to peace for peace, not fight for peace. You don't fight to stop war, you are peaceful to stop war. Simple thing, if we want a peaceful world, we need to be peaceful. But how much peace do we have among ourselves and within ourselves to start with? So it always comes back to self. Finding peace within ourselves and between ourselves will manifest itself eventually collectively as peace between us all. It's these inner conflicts and inner wars that the Illuminati are constantly manipulating to keep us in a state of division within and without, so that we are not in that harmonious state that can see beyond the illusion. Freedom fighters, I love it. Fighting for freedom. The reason so many revolutions end up putting in governments just as bad or worse than the people they threw out is because if you create something out of violence and fighting, then you create the manifestation of that afterwards in government. Back to cognitive dissonance, fighting for freedom. And then there's all this within us, this repression and denial. Again, it comes from fear of expressing who we really are, expressing what we really think, living our lives as we see fit rather than as people tell us we should live our lives. So we repress, we deny what we want to do. We repress and deny our feelings. We repress and deny the fact that our belief systems actually don't stand up. And that creates tremendous turmoil. Again, it's about clearing the mind, clearing the energy field. By just saying, I'm getting rid of this clutter. And this clutter we call belief. I'm putting all belief on hold until I've looked at this again. I'm not clinging to belief as a sense of security. I'm saying all bets are off. I'm going to look at things anew, clear out this belief, clear out this is how it is, and I'm going to defend it till my knuckles turn white to all people that challenge it. Okay, my mind is open to all possibility. Let the evidence show me the way to go. Because so often we talk about wanting truth, but we just don't look where it is. Science does this. It won't look where the truth of reality really is because it doesn't want to find it. Collectively, medicine will not look where true healing lies because it doesn't want to find it, because the moment it does, this whole edifice of drug and scalpel medicine collapses. People with rigid belief systems don't want to find the truth because their belief systems had it, over, finished, finito. Don't want it. But we want the truth, we're just not going to look where it is. Another externalization of our power is, I'm unlucky. I'm unlucky. Why does it always happen to me? Good question. Why does it always happen to you and not happen to this person here? Ever thought of looking here to find a common denominator about why it's always happening to you? No, we're not going to go there because we're not taking responsibility. It's unlucky. I've had bad luck. No such thing as bad luck. There's creating reality. There's decoding reality to experience certain things. Nothing to do with bad luck. It's our inner state externally manifested. And if we take responsibility for that, like I say, and saying it's bad luck, I'm always so unlucky, then we can change experience. But if we keep saying I'm unlucky, we'll go on being unlucky. We won't be, but we'll still convince ourselves that we are. You know, it's kind of funny when you watch football. There's certain teams at certain times that always seem to score a last-minute goal over and over and over in a season. And they say it's Arsenal in England. They say, bloody Arsenal, lucky, always scoring a last-minute goal. Manchester United have done it a lot in the last few months. It's not luck at all. It's the collective state of being of the players expressing itself externally, and that mental and emotional state of that collective mind we call a team is in a state where it is manifesting the fact that it wins over and over, even if it's in the last minute. Other teams who have a different collective, individual and collective state of being, state of perception, they're always losing last-minute goals. Oh, that team's so unlucky. Lucky they lost another game in the last minute. Oh, that's 5. It's not luck. It's perception manifested as experience. So, this reality is like a screen, like a movie screen. This physical reality, this decoded reality we call physical. And by the time it hits the screen, by the time it comes here as an experience, it's a bloody done deal. That's why the Illuminati love it if we try to change this world, holographic, quote, physical world, out here in the illusory holographic physical world, because they know we ain't going to change bugger all. What it's like, absolutely like, is standing in a theatre, and because we don't like the movie, we shout at the screen. Change the movie, I don't like this. Give me a banner. Stop globalization. You're not going to change the movie by screaming at the screen. You've got to go to the back of the theatre and change the bloody reel, because this is just a projection. And this is just a projection. And we run around trying to change a projection within the projection. No chance ever. We need to look within to what is projecting this. And that's beyond the holographic level, down through the electrical and digital level, into the vibrational level of inner being. Awareness, energy. When we change that by going within ourselves, rather than going that way, then the vibrational change we make as a result of that becomes electrical change, becomes decoded change, becomes changed experience on the screen we call the physical world, which is in here, of course. We're looking in the wrong direction, and we have been manipulated to look in the wrong direction. It's what I call combing the mirror. You don't like your hair, what do? You don't comb the mirror, do you? You don't comb the mirror. What are you doing combing the mirror? It's going to change your hair, is it? But that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing all the time, day after day. We're combing the bloody mirror by trying to change out here, when out here is just a done deal reflection of in here. If you want to comb your hair, change your hair, you comb your hair and the mirror reflects it. That's exactly the principle of taking responsibility and saying, what is it within me, my mental and emotional state, my perception that is projecting out from the vibrational through to the decoded holographic physical, this bloody experience that I'm having. Change that, that must change. But we comb the mirror, and therefore nothing can change. I think I read somewhere that somebody's suggesting now that something like 2% of the decisions we make come from the conscious mind, and the rest come from the subconscious, within, beyond what we call conscious awareness. Although actually it's mind awareness in most people, not conscious awareness. I would go further than that. I would say 100% of decisions, actions that take place within this holographic physical reality come from within, not from the conscious mind. The conscious mind is the observer of experience. It is the experiencer, but it is not the origin of the behavioral and responses that we appear to take within this reality. They all come from a deep subconscious level and out through the decoding system into this level of projection, this movie screen, and at that point it's a done deal. It's just the movie hitting the screen. So it's within that we need to find answers. One of the things that's been coming out in recent years is this law of attraction. I think it's been a bit simplified myself, but it's the idea, and there's a hell of a lot of truth in it, that what you put out, you attract towards you. Now, what's interesting is, given what I've just said, is it's not my physical, holographic, illusory body that attracts in. Other people, experiences, locations that we are attracted to and come into our lives. It is the vibrational level of me that connect with other vibrational fields we call people, places, ways of life, experiences, and we draw them into our lives. That's the level it happens on. And then as we draw those energy fields in, those energy fields are decoded by our five senses into electrical signals, and then we decode the vibrational fields through the electrical into this person coming into our life called Mary Jones or something, from, I don't know, down the street or wherever. So when we're talking about the law of attraction, again, that law of attraction is at a deep vibrational level of reality, not on this so-called physical level. So again, what we are, what's happening on those deep vibrational levels of being, or what is attracting our experience and people in. So again, that's what we need to change if we're going to change what we draw in. It's no good trying to change it by looking out here and drawing in people that way. The law of attraction is what draws in vibrationally and then becomes holographic. The people, places, jobs, opportunities or lack of opportunities, or why is this person so unlucky that he turned up just right for this to happen and I turned up over here 5 minutes late and I didn't get that because of this, that and the other. Why is he lucky and why is his life synchronistic and mine never seems to come together? There's always something going wrong because at some vibrational level we're not syncing, so our external life won't sync. It's all happening. Vibrational level is what we need to get to. What we call subconscious and deep levels of being. This is just an illusory screen, like I say. If we are on a vibrational level, we have some kind of fear, then we will draw in, through what I call vibrational magnetism, energy fields that sync with that fear. And it will be an expression of that fear often. So, when I was a kid, I was frightened of dogs. And my mates weren't frightened of dogs. When we walked through the park, dogs came from all directions, started jumping up, they bit out my coat and everything. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm so unlucky. They're not frightened of dogs, and the dogs never go near them. I'm frightened of dogs, and they always come for me. Why am I so unlucky? No, I was putting out some vibrational fear of dogs. The dogs were picking it up on a vibrational level and were being attracted to me to cause me hassle. When I let go of my fear of dogs, dogs never came near me again. And that's a simple example of what's happening to us in all areas of our lives. You'll never guess. You know, I've always been frightened of so-and-so. It's only happened. Well, why does it happen to you and not to him? Because you drew it in. These are the levels where, if we don't take responsibility for them, we'll stay in the box. It's the same with love. If we put love out, I mean true love, and it's within this reality and this mind-made construct, it is real challenge to get to that level of love that is beyond individual love to love of all. But when we get to those levels, you start to draw in expressions of that, and your life starts to change as a result of that. And one of the key energies for me that we put out that will change everything is intent. Some people call it the will. It's when not an intellectual, I want to do this, or I want to be spiritual, that's it, but I want to be the full magnitude of who I am. I want to become consciously aware of who I am and my true power and infinite nature, and I will do anything necessary to make that happen. When you put out that intent and you mean it, it's not just a trite phrase, then you start to draw in what you need to create that intent every time. But we have this belief when we do this put out this power of intent. Because, I'll give you an example. When I started to realize, nearly 20 years ago now, that the world wasn't like I thought it was. Well, not what I thought it was. I don't really think about it much, but it wasn't like I perceived it to be, and everyone perceived it to be. I put out the intent, because I was fascinated by it. I want to know what it's all about. And I will do what is necessary to find out what it's all about. I'm going to do this. And what happens is, that intent starts to draw towards you what you need to achieve that intent. Now, what you think is, when you put out the intent, I want to be spiritual, then everything kind of becomes beautiful, and nymphs fly around you, and butterflies and stuff, and everything falls into place, and there are bright colors, and country lanes with angels playing violins and harps, and it's all spiritual now. And when you put out the intent, I want to know what's going on, I want to know the bigger truth of everything, you think that, people are going to come along and just hand it to you. What actually happens is all hell breaks loose in your life, often. It bloody broke loose in mine. And so at this point, so many people stop on this journey of awakening to the true magnitude of who they are, because they see things coming towards them where their old life starts to break down, relationships might start to break up, they lose this job, they might lose financial security, I certainly bloody did, and suddenly you think, no, something's going wrong here, this can't be right, I want to be spiritual now. But what is happening, and if we only realize that, what's happening, it would be so much easier. We are putting out a vibrational expression of our inner state of being. That manifests itself as what we call our life. The people in it, the relationships in it, the jobs, the locations, the opportunities, the lifestyle. When you say, okay, I want to transform, I want to know the big picture, I want to be spiritual now, then intent doesn't say, cue nymphs, cue angels with harps, that guy over there, okay? What it says is, here's what you need to achieve that. And because we live in a mind-made world, constructed by mind-made domination and perception, if we want what we say we want, that has to break down. Otherwise, it's going to stop us getting where we say we want to go forever bloody more. So what intent then does is bring to us pains in the backside, people we wish we'd never met, losing your job, losing financial security, maybe a relationship breaking down. It doesn't always happen like this. It depends what you need to break down this construct to allow the real self in. And what happens to large numbers of people, often because they don't understand this, and I bloody know what it's like because I didn't understand it when I went through the first part of this, they say, okay, I'd like to know the truth and I'd like to be spiritual, okay, but not that bloody badly. No, thank you. And they walk away and they say, see, you don't create your own reality. I wanted to do that, but my life fell apart. No, your life was falling apart because your intent was breaking down the energetic construct that had manifested as what you call your life. And because that has to go before that can come in, you were in the process of transforming. You were in the most challenging part of the process of transforming, but that's what you were in. And because I'm a stubborn bugger, me, and I don't like giving up, I kept with it, and eventually the waters broke. And I realized that what would have been happening through those nightmare years of mass ridicule and mass rejection and all the other stuff was that construct that was holding me in the illusion was being broken down. And I came up with this phrase which is so applicable to my life. Life gives you your greatest gifts brilliantly disguised as your worst nightmare. And only when you go beyond it and you see what that gave you with hindsight, do you realize this nightmare was actually your greatest gift, because it was breaking down the prison that has now set you free. And this again kicks in when this process is going on. Oh no, survival of your reputation. What will people think of you? Oh my God. And when you don't give in to that and you go through it, bingo, the promised land. The Secret, this thing that this DVD that talked about what you put out, you get back, and if you focus on wanting a Ferrari and visualize it, then you'll create it. Well, maybe you will, but we have life experiences, and if your life experience does not involve a Ferrari, then you can paint your house with Ferraris and focus on them all day. They ain't coming. It's not that simple. And again, like I say, why me? Why me? Exactly. Why you? Why are you creating that experience and not someone else? Change what's attracting it, the experience will disappear. And there are so many influences that are affecting our reality, astrological influences, which are just energetic fields affecting our own energetic field. The life experience that we came to experience, the way we decode reality, all these things are deciding what our lives are. But we can have control over all of them if we become conscious and allow consciousness to be the governor of our experience and not mind. And that means living life instead of life living us. Most people on this planet go through their 70 years and 10 having life, the program, live them. They just follow the program thinking they're making the decisions, but all they're doing is going round and round on the carousel, absolutely convinced that one day they'll catch up with a horse in front, but they never do. And if we got off the carousel and started living life instead of letting life live us, then we'll have a totally different experience. And crucial to breaking out of this prison is breaking down this density, this solidity we call mind, and opening it up to all possibility, the ocean, so that we can be in this world but not of it. And the process in the Matrix kind of sums up brilliantly what happens when you start on this journey. Stage one is to accept that we are in a situation of slavery. Because only when we accept that do we start to see the bars of the prison and therefore realize there's something to be addressed here. If we don't even go as far as seeing that we're in slavery to this system, then we don't see the bars, we do nothing about it. We go round and round and round until we hit the coffin and away we bloody go. So, but becoming aware that we're in a state of slavery. Stage two, choosing freedom above slavery. And that means going through these processes I've just been talking about of breaking down and transforming from the construct of mind that we had to a mind that is much more fluid and connected to consciousness, which we call transformation. And that symbolic, very difficult transformation that the Neo character went through, of course Neo being an anagram for one, was very, very symbolic of the challenges that we go through in our lives. Experience self is breaking down, the program self is breaking down, and the conscious self is starting to emerge, the one, the oneness. My God, I've been in that position a few times. I've gone onto the top of hills in England, away from everybody, so I couldn't cause anybody any trouble, And I have screamed primordial screams of frustration just to get it out, trying to bang my head against a wall when at the time it seemed no one would listen. It's changed now, but I've been there so many times. But the more, and especially since I went through that process of letting it go, doesn't matter, I don't do that anymore. I haven't screamed for years because I haven't felt necessity to scream, because the frustration is not there like it was, because the construct that produced that frustration has broken down. And we can move to this place as we open up from mind domination, which we find so difficult to perceive. I'm with you on that, of this cosmic level of love where we love everything and everyone. Why? Because they are. Because everything and everyone that is what we are. The divisions between us of race and sex and politics and religion are all illusions. We are one consciousness, having an experience. And when we hurt another expression of consciousness, we're just attacking ourselves without realizing it. Love is not something you're in, it's something you are. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in all its beauty. That's consciousness, not mind. Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. All possibility, the silent, no thing, everything, is infinite love. And that is the only truth. Everything else we call creation and form is illusion. Creations of the imagination and the all-knowing, all-potential of infinite love. The silent, all-knowing, all-possibility, no thing, everything. That's what we ultimately are. But we are aware, our awareness is now experiencing this realm of form. And it's just an experience. Everything from the beginning, my birth, my ancestors, my children, my wife, everything comes together simultaneously. I saw everything about me and everyone who was around me. I saw everything they were thinking now, what they thought then, what was happening before, what was happening now. There is no time, there is no sequence of events, no such thing as limitation of distance, of period, of time, of place. I could be anywhere I wanted to be simultaneously. That is who we are. Where is Ethel Jones and Charlie Smith? Where are they? Now, if we can take that level of our self and observe our life experience from that point of view, instead of being near, oh my God, then everything changes. And suddenly, fewer and fewer things matter. This gets activated less and less. And suddenly consciousness starts to take over rather than mind. We start to access our true identity and live it instead of the false identity, know thyself. Don't think you are, know you are. That's another point. The mind thinks, but thought is a very low level of perception and communication. Knowing is the communication of consciousness, and knowing you can't put words to, you just know. Why do you know you've got to be at so-and-so's tomorrow morning? Explain it to me. Mind wants an explanation. You can't just know, you must know why. No, I just know. I don't have to think, I don't have to explain it, I just know. That's consciousness, what we call intuition, that's consciousness. And when you open to consciousness, your life starts to work like that. You know, when somebody asks me if I want to talk, in a place, I ask very few questions. I should, because I might end up in a disaster. But my intuition said, yes, go with that. And somebody might offer me something that appears good, and my mind goes, oh yeah, that sounds good. No. I don't do it. And it's amazing how it works out. And after a while, the war stops when you follow your intuition. Because at the start, again, the survival mechanism kicks in, and the bloody left brain, you can't do that. You can't just say, I know, and go somewhere. You must have to explanation for it, and you must plan, and do triplicate. And then after a while, although going with your intuition gets you into some scrapes in terms of you do things differently to the norm, and when you face those scrapes, the old head comes in and goes, see, told you, you don't listen to me, see? Then after a while, the mind observes that when you follow this, even though you have some challenges, it works out in the end, not despite the challenges, but because of them, which led to that. And after a while, your mind and your intuitive knowing come together, and the war ends. And you start to intuitively know and think the same. And it's an extraordinary feeling, like two halves of you coming together and speaking as one. Speaking as one. And when we start to make this transition from mind domination, we start to break up the mind-made world and, crucially, the mind-made conspiracy, and we have system failure. And there's no question after 20 years of 50 countries and year after year that there is a shift taking place. People have talked about a shift and how there's an energetic shift. People have talked about 2012. I'm not really with them on that, but a shift, absolutely. There's an energetic change. I wrote a book, the first book I ever wrote after I had my, top of my head blew off and I didn't even know my name for about 3 months, in 1990. I wrote this book called Truth Vibrations. And the reason I called it Truth Vibrations is I became aware in this transitional period when I was getting concepts and things I never understood. I learned that from various ways that there was a vibrational change coming. This is 1990. And it was going to awaken humanity from its amnesia, its hypnotic state. And this vibrational change was going to work like a spiritual alarm clock, and it was going to break up this density we call the mind construct. And that's why I called that book in 1990, it came out in 91, Truth Vibrations. The vibrations that were going to awaken us to the truth. Another thing that it said, kind of amazing given what's happening now, is that this energetic change was going to bring to the surface all that had been hidden. And people were going to see what had really been happening, what had in this world, when they had no idea. And what's happening now, the hidden is becoming up to the surface. And I've seen, and as this change happens and we tune into it, amazing things happen to us. We're moving more and more people from this perception of division and apartness, left-brained, mind-made perception, to an understanding of oneness, that we're all one, like Jill Bolte Taylor experienced when she got literally out of her head, or left side of it anyway. And I've seen, when I got this information about this vibrational change, there was no bloody evidence to support it in any way, shape or form. None at all. I mean, far from kind of awakening to it, I was being hit by mass abuse in Britain for what I was saying. But over the last 20 years, my God, I've seen it, and it's an exponential curve. And people are now waking up spontaneously and just getting it. Like, how do they get it so fast? Because they're awakening to this truth vibration, this truth vibration, this energetic change that we're experiencing. And I'm beginning to understand more and more is the reason this conspiracy is running almost panic-stricken to put the lid on through microchipping people and surveillance and control and all the rest of it, is to put the lid on because they know this is coming. And they knew it's been coming, and that's why now they're suddenly going really as fast as they can to create this prison world, to shut people down as this truth vibration starts to wake them up, and to break up this schism, bring back the vibrational harmony, and bring us back to the kind of world we used to have when we were in harmony with each other, with self, and with all existence. Now, there's this thing coming up, 2012, and people are talking about 2012 and vibrational change. Now, given what I've just said and what I wrote 20 years ago, I should be saying, yeah, see, supports what I said. I don't go with 2012, me. I think it's overplayed. I think there's a lot more to know about it, and I think it's a diversion. But is there a vibrational change? My God, there is. And nearly there. I don't go in for this channeling stuff very much, but because there are some people who can open their consciousness, open their mind, and access high levels of consciousness, reality, dimensions, whatever you want to call them, and bring down that information into this reality to give you a real big, greater awareness of this. But there are others who claim to be channels and that stuff, who are actually channeling their own bloody mind and filling it with their own belief systems and all the rest of it. So you have to be very careful. And I don't go in for that much, but you get someone who's good and really out there, and it can be tremendous stuff. Well, in 1990, just after I had this awakening, or was in the process of it, I got introduced to this lady. I met her twice. And she used to channel this entity, which I had the name Magnu. It doesn't matter, it's just a name for a consciousness. And I was new to all this stuff, what's happening to my life, and that I couldn't work it out. But I saw this woman. A friend of mine took me to see her because she said, oh, she's brilliant and stuff. And if people don't believe in shape-shifting, they should see this woman. She kind of sat there, and we had a chat, and she said, well, it's a woman having a chat. And then she goes into this channel mode. Bloody face completely changed. I'm all new to this. I'm thinking, bloody hell, what's going on? And what a change. And the voice was just incredibly different. But a face, I'll never forget it. It just completely changed and transformed. And what she said, I recorded it, and I wrote it down, and I've kept it ever since. 20 years now, nearly, 19 anyway. And my goodness me, as it kind of spanned the years and held its credibility for me. This is what this entity said in 1990, when there was no sign of it, except for a few. I feel you are sensing now the energies coming in, the energies surrounding your planet. This is causing many of you to ask questions. It is causing many of you to reevaluate completely your way of life, where you feel you wish to go, what you want to do. It is causing tremendous upheavals. Some of these upheavals are very confusing, very distressing, very disturbing. Some people in partnerships are finding they can no longer continue in those partnerships because their partners cannot tune in to what they are tuning into. It is causing a great deal of disturbance. And I have said to this sensitive on more than one occasion that you must organize yourself into groups to support each other. Now then, my own allegiance with your planet goes back to an Atlantean period when there were many energies being used and information and knowledge being used, which were, for particular reasons of safety, withdrawn, shall we say, to prevent complete catastrophe, to prevent total destruction of your planet. Here we are now coming back to how we all started this, or talked about a long time ago, part Atlantis. One could say that these were sort of emergency measures, if you like, to prevent the inhabitants of this planet from an untimely destruction. This is the energetic schism I've been on about. Now, at that time, shall we say, this knowledge was distributed only to the few. It was taught in what you might call a temple setting, though I am very careful about using this word. It has connotations, maybe. So let me use that word in the broadest possible sense. There were those initiated into this knowledge, there were grades of initiation, and those who passed the full initiation, these were known as the guardians of the light and keepers of the secret knowledge. This is the context from which I am coming. There came a time when this knowledge and the energies were withdrawn. It is very difficult for me to explain to you precisely what I mean by that, so I will let you mull these things over. As the energies around your planet quicken, these latent energies, these energies which have been withdrawn, will now be phased back in. They will gradually be awakened. As the consciousness level of your planet raises itself, those of you light workers who are working together to raise your consciousness, you will be able to hold more and more refined vibrations, and so we will be able to use you as a catalyst to be able to feed in more and more energies. Now, of course, for energies that are not of this frequency to come in to affect this frequency, they have to be grounded through vehicles that are of this frequency, so they access this frequency range and start to affect it. Otherwise, it's just never the twain shall meet. As more of you raise yourselves to meet the challenge, so we can awaken more of these energies. Now, energy is consciousness, and the energies themselves contain knowledge and the information which is beginning to surface again in your consciousness, so that many of you will remember Atlantean times. You will remember that you communicated with, say, dolphins and whales. You understood these other sentient creatures. You could levitate. You could manifest things. You could cause spontaneous combustion by not miraculous means at all. Once you know what you're doing, these things follow. It's a matter of order. Now, I am looking at a time on your planet when these energies, this knowledge, is reawakened and reintegrated into your consciousness. I'm not looking at a time when this knowledge will be for the few, but when your whole planet will be awakened to this understanding which you have simply forgotten. It's not a matter of new information, it's a matter of remembering who you are and where you come from. So you're being asked to change. You're being asked to change in a total way. It's not a matter of small changes, of a little thing here, a little thing there. You are really being asked to turn yourselves inside out. There is a massive shadow which must be cleared, and it is up to light workers such as yourselves to focus yourself on that challenge. Remember, this was nearly 20 years ago now. Those of you who are in the forefront of this, you are rather like a snowplow. You are the thin end of the wedge. You really have, how shall I put this, to a certain extent, I suppose, you have the shitty end of the job. You have an awful lot to do, but nevertheless, you are capable of doing an awful lot. That's why you've chosen to come. That is why you are here, and what you are here for, to really shovel some shit, and therefore make some space behind you to make it easier for the others. As in your human body, there are energy lines around your planet, through your planet, which correspond, I suppose, very much to the acupuncture lines and meridians in your body. Where two lines cross, you create a vortex, a tiny vortex if it's two. The more lines that intersect, the bigger the vortex. Therefore, when you have a chakra, you have a large vortex of intersecting energy. It is the same with your planet. Where the most lines cross, there is the biggest vortex. Now, you could say the plexus in and around the islands you call the British Isles is the hub of the wheel of plexuses and energies which surround your planet. It has acted in other times like a fail-safe device. In order to activate these chakric points upon your planet, the energies must pass through the central point. They must pass through the heart of the pattern. And that is a key reason why the Illuminati have focused so much of their attention and location upon the British Isles. They are trying to control the heart of the pattern. This is why you have more stone circles, standing stones, per square mile in Britain, especially down the west coast and in Ireland, and in Ireland, anywhere else in the world per square mile. It's because of this energy plexus, which they knew about, and people like the Druids knew about, and all the rest of it. And so this energetic change is there to, and also there are changes going on in the sun, which scientists are finding very strange, like these sunspots are staying in a low state much longer than were expected to. But this energetic change is coming at a time when it's offering us the opportunity to break out of this prison that's been created, this false reality that came after this schism, which is now being corrected. It may not seem like it, but it is being corrected. Now we can, again, we're coming back to things I said earlier, a few minutes or so ago, we can flow with this change and go with it and be at peace with it and take all the wonderful things it gives us as our awareness expands and our lives change. Or we can fight it. We can stand there trying to hold on to the status quo. That's what the Illuminati are trying to do, and this whole construct, trying to hold back from this energetic change. And eventually you're using more and more energy just to hold the status quo, and eventually this energetic change will wash them away, or wash us away, if we don't flow with it, this energetic change, which is changing the way we decode reality. And what it's doing, again, it doesn't seem like it, because as we look at the news, but the news tells a fraction of the story, is that we're in the process of seeing this construct represented by this Neil Hague symbolic image, this construct of the system breaking up and the time loop breaking out. So we then become the beings we were, or humans were, before the schism, where we were in harmony with self, in harmony with each other, and in harmony with all that is. And the schism has been so profound, we find it so difficult to even consider or imagine what that kind of life must be, because of what the schism and the genetic manipulation has done to our perception of reality. So we're at a time to choose. We're at that crossroads. As Voltaire said, so long as people do not care to exercise their freedom, those who wish to tyrannize will do so, for tyrants are active and ardent and will devote themselves in the name of any number of gods, religious and otherwise, to put shackles on sleeping men. The answer to that, wake up. Cease to become sleeping men, women and children. And to those who say, well, yeah, I'm going to find an excuse why not. Well, if we think this manipulation has reached a rather concerning level, then what are our children and grandchildren going to face? Look them in the eye and say, what were you doing, mummy, daddy, granddad, grandma, when the fascist state came in that controls every area of my life? I was watching a game show, honey. It was ever so good. She was going for the car. Oh, well, I was a policeman. I was helping to introduce it, dear. Oh, I was a man in a dark suit. I didn't know what I was doing, honest. We're going to have some very difficult conversations and diverting our eyes from our children and grandchildren if they ask that question a few years from now, if we just sit around and do nothing. We have the crossroads. It's between the head, fear, survival, I can do nothing, I'm little me, heart, consciousness, I'm infinite. Consciousness having an experience. And it's a great line in an old 60s song, I think it was, in America. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. It's amazing how you become free when you've got nothing left to lose. Because people have things. You see, these people have lots of things and they have lots of money and all that stuff, but they're not free because they're attached to the things and they fear losing them, so they've lost their ability to be free. And it's really when you've got nothing left to lose, or your perception of nothing left to lose, that's when you become free and you start to express the real you. All the time people can put off challenging authority and put off challenging authority and put off challenging authority until authority is at the door and they've got nothing left to lose, and then nothing left to lose, now I can challenge authority. And you know, we've got great challenges, but those challenges are simply the old construct breaking down so that this real us can come forward. I saw this proverb, just when the caterpillar thought life was over, it became a butterfly. Just when you think, I can talk about my own experience. I reached a point in 2007 when I thought what I was doing was all over, and I thought there was nothing more that I could do. I thought, that's it. I've given it my best shot. And just at that point I thought it was all over. Things were happening which have made it more incredible than ever I thought it could be. Because just when I thought life was over, my life became a butterfly. And that's the same with all of us, because it was just when I thought life was over and I couldn't go any more, that is when the old construct finally broke down and the new one could come in with great power, and it's transformed my life. So, I'm waking up. What can I do now? Well, the greatest thing we can do is to stop making excuses. The mind is brilliant at excuses and providing all the reasons why we should do nothing and why we can justify to ourselves doing nothing, because, of course, there's nothing I can do. It goes round and round and round. If we don't want to be in this state, then no more excuses. And the greatest thing that humanity can do is get off its bloody knees. We find so many reasons to get on our bloody knees. Thank God I've got arthritis, I can't get down there anymore. What are you doing down there? Your infinite consciousness, all that is, has been, ever will be, having an experience. Oh, no. On our knees to money, on our knees to religion, on our knees to everything. As Martin Luther King said, a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. One thing we could do, and support young people in doing it, is refuse to join the bloody military. Refuse to join the military. What they said in the 60s, what if they started a war and no one turned up? There can't be any war because it's the silly buggers that fight the wars on behalf of those that call and start the wars but never fight them. As Einstein said, the pioneers of a warless world are the youth who refuse military service. And if the youth refuse military service and older people support them, instead of going, oh no, can't do that, serve your country, then we can bring an end to so much conflict by simply refusing to take part in it. It's funny how soldiers have the courage, physical courage, to go and put their lives at risk, but then don't have the moral courage, often, some do, to actually confront authority. They find that much more difficult than going and putting their physical lives at risk. And instead of going on protest marches, the system doesn't mind that. Because what are they doing? Holding a banner up to the bloody done deal projection on the screen. The system doesn't mind protest marches. If they get out of hand, and a lot of agents provocateurs make sure they do, then they've got more excuses to bring in the police state because we've got to keep these marches under control. In many ways, they're like steam whistles, as I call them. They let people let off steam so it doesn't go too far, and then they go home and they feel good about themselves because they've had a protest march, but nothing's bloody changed. We've had protest marches about war and globalization and endless things. Wars go on, globalization gets ever faster. What the system is terrified of is us coming together and ceasing to cooperate with our own enslavement. It's terrified of that. But this is why it works so hard to divide and rule us, so we never come together and cooperate or cease to cooperate in our own enslavement. As Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If we come together and support and challenge the injustice of each other, even though that injustice doesn't immediately affect us, then we have a unity where we can make a difference. But when we're saying, oh no, that's his problem, not mine, oh, that's his problem, not mine, well, eventually it becomes your problem. If we don't support the injustice of others, eventually the injustice finds you. It's like that guy, Pastor Niemöller in Germany, who said, first they came for the Jews, and I was not a Jew, so I did nothing. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I was not a trade unionist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the communists, and I was not a communist, communist and I was not a communist, so I did nothing. Then they came for me. There was no one left to speak out for me. So what they're doing now is picking off different sections of society, like Muslims and others, and as they pick them off, and other people are saying, well, it's not my problem, I'm not a Muslim, I'm not a so-and-so, I'm not so-and-so, and then they pick more off and pick more off, and now, people who thought that they were not subject to imposition and police states, like the middle class in Britain, are now going, hold on a second, they're starting to impinge on me. Exactly. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. It's time to come together. Strength does not come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will. And my goodness me, we need that now. And what is there to fear anyway? When you move that point of observation from little me to all that is, what is there to fear? What is there to fear about authority? What is the fear about someone in uniform? Okay, so they do this, so they do that. So we leave this reality a few years early, one or two. Well, we're all that is. It's just an experience. Will we feel better about having tried to make a difference, or we will feel better if we acquiesce and keep our heads down and yes sir, no sir, so we keep going a little bit longer, and then we leave this reality, which we're all going to do anyway? Will we feel good about what we did then? Or will we feel good about saying, no, I'm standing for what I believe in, and I'm not backing off just because you're trying to intimidate me? Comply. This is the pyramid of power. And what do we notice? We, silly sods, are the ones holding it up. You ever noticed a pyramid? The top doesn't hold the bottom up, the bottom holds the top up. And we stand there with our acquiescence and with our fear of challenging authority, with our fear of being different, and we hold this whole edifice of power up, and then we moan about not being free. And if a few people walked out of that pyramid, sorry mate, not doing this anymore. It's the intimidation and the manipulation that keeps us holding this whole thing together. Because this edifice of power is a house of cards. And it depends on us holding the cards together. That's why those at the top of this house of cards are so terrified of us waking up and coming together and ceasing to take part in our own enslavement. Because once we do that, we walk away from the house of cards, and the house of cards collapses. So, I said this in America a few weeks ago. There are hundreds of thousands of people having their houses foreclosed because they've lost their jobs as a result of the banking abomination and greed. And now the banks who created the problem, which led to the people losing their jobs so they can't pay their mortgage, are now coming to taking their house away. And you know what? They're packing their bags and leaving. I say, what the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing? If you acquiesce to that injustice, then the system wins every time. But if in large numbers, people in America, these hundreds of thousands of people losing their bloody jobs every month or so, said, we're not moving. The system couldn't cope with that level of foreclosures that would not move. And what if the neighbors helped them out? Suddenly the system can't cope because the people are coming together and they're saying, no, we are not accepting this. This is injustice. That's what we need to protect in justice, not laws that are unjust. If we believe that when a law is passed you have to obey it, then okay, here's me wrists. Put the bloody chains on. Because there's no point. There's no way out of this. Men in dark suits pass laws, introduce laws. Oh, I've had no say in that law. I don't agree with it. I think it's really unjust, but it's the law, so I have to obey it. There you go, put the chains on. Let's all go home. Waste of time. What we need to do is say not the law is there, so we need to obey it. Is that law just? Is that law fair? Does that law justify itself? in terms of those criteria? If no, I ain't doing it. And foreclosing on people and throwing them out of their homes when the people who are throwing them out of their homes are responsible for the fact that they can't pay the mortgage and therefore get thrown out of their homes, that's fundamental grotesque injustice. What are we doing walking away? What about that thing with wheelie bins I talked about earlier, 250 quid for putting a wheelie bin out on the wrong day? And people go, oh, it's terrible, what's the world coming to? Okay, thousands of you in the same area this week all put your wheelie bins out 2 days before the wrong bloody day. Thousands of you. Okay, local council, sort that little lot out. And you know next week the same's happening. And the next, until you stop doing this ridiculous fining of people for this situation. That's just a simple example. We had a thing in Britain a few years ago, back in the 80s actually, more than a few years, called the poll tax, introduced by Margaret Thatcher, where rich and poor had to pay the same. Ridiculous. And because, crucially, it affected what we call the middle class and the working class in Britain, so that divide, which normally means that's not my problem, has gone, there was a unity of response. Large numbers of people said, this is unjust, we're not paying it. Some of them went to jail for a few weeks, most of them did not. And what happened? Because the system couldn't cope with we're not paying on that scale, the poll tax had to go, and it was fundamental in actually removing Margaret Thatcher from office. The non-comply dance, refusing to comply with our own enslavement. And, you know, I was saying the other day, there's this wonderful line, necessity is the mother of invention. And if we just focus on the fact that we need to find the weakest points in the system where we cease to comply to bring the system down and under our control instead of it controlling us, then the mother of invention from that focus will find phenomenally creative ways of, with the least hassle for us, bringing the system down through non-cooperation, mass non-cooperation. But we have to decide to do it. What are we doing letting these people, some of them in such a moronic state, dictate our lives and the lives of our children and grandchildren? What are we doing? Get off our knees! My goodness, what are we doing? They talk about freedom. They cannot grant me my freedom. I am freedom. It's not in their gift to give, and I express my unbreakable desire and will not to concede my freedom to some ridiculous, manipulated system that ceases to impose itself on my life. I am free. I will express my freedom, and you will not grant it to me. It's not in your gift. What would consciousness do? We know what mine would do. What would consciousness do? It's a great line if we are faced with situations. What would consciousness do? Great line from Marcus Aurelius. It is not, if it's not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Real simple. What would consciousness do? If we want a world of peace, then be peaceful. Yeah, you bloody hell, bloody hell, bloody hell. What time are you going on that peace march? If we want a world of kindness, then be kind. Kind of hard, isn't it? It's so desperately intellectual. Martin Luther King said, cowardice asked the question, is it safe? Expediency asked the question, is it politic? Vanity asked the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but one must take it because it is right. What would change this world overnight? If we started doing and assessing situations and our behavior and our actions on the basis of what is right rather than what is necessarily our perception of what is right for us in